Thank you so much for having me here once again. I don't know if it's like the fourth or the fifth demo I did here in the last like 10 years probably. You know, I came the first time thanks to Cecilia, that she contacted me because I was coming around New York and I did my first demo. And actually the first time I did a demo was on a Mugo Pine that actually Chris has now. That was my first demo, I think, here at the club. When was that? 8 years ago, 10 years ago? Yeah.
It was at least 8 years ago.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm pretty used to work on Mugos. They are, you know, native in my area in the Dolomites. We have from different altitude, different sub-variety of Mugo. This is actually, I think, the Pumila variety, that is the lower elevation, so a little bit more used to hot and not so cold environment like the Mugos that grows in the top of the mountain. We have Mugos up to yours 9,000 feet, so 2,500 meters, more or less. So they are used to very cold environment. They don't accept heat on the roots. That's also one of the problems that you can have here with the Mugos. We're talking with that gentleman that he said he took a tree, a Mugo from his front yard or backyard, and the tree then slowly had problem because he was in a bonsai pot. So they are Heliophilos trees, that means son of Helios, son of the sun, so they need direct sun to grow, but they don't like to get heat on the roots. So if you have a Mugo at home, I do the same. In summer, when the temperature rises drastically, what I do, I protect the pot with, you can use different technique. Some people put cork, so that you can buy panels, little panels of cork, and you protect. I have a student that made an L-shape wood around the pot, so the wood can protect the pot from heating up. I use coconut fiber, and I wrap coconut fiber outside the pot, and these don't allow the sun to go directly, especially if the tree is in a plastic container or is in ceramic, to really get too hot. And especially because the tree absorbs a lot of the energy and the heat of the sun during the day, it needs to cool down during the night. So it needs the difference of temperature between foliage and roots. So the foliage get hot and in the night move down the heat to the roots, and so we need to keep the root ball cooler. When these don't happen, then the tree start losing branches because basically the roots or part of the roots get cooked. Okay? Another thing we do eventually, if you live in a very hot environment, rather than grow the tree on top of a bench that it doesn't have a natural connection to dissipate the heat with the ground, during summer, sit the trees in the soil in your garden. So doing that also you can help it getting rid of that extra heat. The roots will be fresh and the tree will be much stronger. Okay? This is a kind of a nice little bush. Pumila is used a lot, especially in Europe. Is not many. You don't see them in landscape, but here in US it's been used in colder environment a lot as a landscape tree. So probably this tree came from a landscape and then was grew for many years in a bonsai pot, but without doing any work in the structure. So we have some little trunk, a lot of foliage. Unfortunately, as you can see, the foliage is most of all at the outer part of the branches because growing up like this as a bush, you know, there is a lot of inner competition. As you can see already from the mess I did, I already started removing branches that died inside that obviously I don't need for the design, cleaning a little bit the inner needle and everything. It's something that also naturally happens in the mountain because these Mugos grows on top of the rock. They don't have a real apical dominance like Scots pine or black pine, you know. So they have more of a lateral dominance and they keep redistribute the energy all over the tree. That for us is a good thing for bonsai because we don't risk to have, like for other trees, top strong and weak lower branches. You see, we have some lower branches, very old, but they still hold on of the energy until they have light to develop. But again, we need to make decision because we have to, you know, transition this tree to be a nice little bush in a bonsai pot and one day become a nice little bonsai in a bonsai pot. Okay, so basically now what we have available, we have to analyze the structure that the tree is offering us. We have one leader trunk, and two basically secondary trunks. They are more or less the same size, okay? So already we say, okay, can be a triple trunk. What I can do is pick in the front, for example here, where one of the trunk, it became a back trunk to create depth, and I have other two trunks in the front, and they become the major trunks. Start laying down the branches and create a little bit of the basic structure of the tree. I can also say, okay, you know what? Because the base is a little bit better from this side here, and always the choice of my front is made considering three main elements: base, structure, trunk line, base, trunk line, and structure. I can say, okay, I like more the base from this side. I have one dominant trunk coming towards the observer, rather than here where the two other trunks are a little bit parallel, okay. I still have another trunk in the back, and I can also, you know, use some of these branches. You see, this is a branch that got a little bit dominant and almost create another little tree. So I can say, okay, rather than 3 apexes, I can make 5 apexes because the main leader opens in 2 secondary trunk in a certain height. I have these that can consider the third, I have the fourth, and I have the fifth. So I can make a composition of 5 apexes. So a little bit more complex than just the 3, or eventually the other option could be saying, okay, you know what? This trunk is not really great. It lost a lot of branches, you see, lost many branches from the heat. I don't know if it's gonna make the next year. I can decide to gin it and just do a double trunk, so simplify the design. Personally, even if I know it's a little bit more work, I like the idea to start with a multiple trunk. I think it could be a better solution for the future because a tree like this one that doesn't have such a drastic movement in the trunks, if I simplify too much, it will be too simple. But if I create a design where many elements basically fuse in the overall look of the tree, I think the tree will be much better. Also, these keeping more trunks will give me more the chance to do more selection. The problem now, as you can see, we have a lot of inner point of the structure where 3, 4, 5 branches come from the same spot. Obviously, I cannot cut 4 out of 5, but I can start a selection that will help me in 1 or 2 other restyling to get a good structure of the tree. Younger pines always grow like this. They grow up, they ramify 3 or 4 branches. Again, 3 or 4. And this is a little bit something we have to take care along the year, reselecting those branches and come out with a good structure. Okay? So now I want to start considering these as the front, selecting the branches. Don't be scared when I will prune, because some people always freak out if I cut a branch. Who?
Celia's not.
Okay, bene. So I will select some branches. I will leave always extra branches. I don't want to select too much and basically shut down the energy of the tree drastically. I want to still keep the energy flowing. But for example, a branch like this one, you see, is frontal, is smaller than the one I will eventually consider as my first branch, has only little foliage in the top, can be a good idea to create a gin, so I will also create some deadwood. I have to remove, okay? If anyone has any question, don't be scared. Ooh.
If you prune too much, it would take away that energy. Like it would take too much energy.
Yeah, you know, when you do the first styling on a tree, you start with a tree that has, let's say, 100% of solar panels, that they perform photosynthesis and they help the tree to be stronger. And you don't want to remove everything and go back to 10%, because that will create such a big difference between the root ball that obviously we don't touch and the green. I also sometimes, if you think you're gonna do a lot of selection, it's better to prepare the material in time. So the year before the first styling, remove what you consider too dominant or too weak to move the energy where you want, and then you reach the moment of the styling with the amount of foliage that will be suitable for the future development of the tree and will not really push down the energy so much. In this case where, yes, I have to, select some of the branches that come from these knobs, also because I don't want in time to improve a reverse taper of the trunk because there are 5 or 6 branches from the same spot, I need to do a previous selection, okay? But in general at home, when I have the time to really prepare my material, along the year while I'm growing the trees and getting my Yamadori especially strong, if I know already some branches are not suitable for the design, I start removing them and concentrate the energy in the branches that will build the future structure of the tree, okay? So here, being the first styling, what I want to do, and my goal is mainly remove branches that are more in the weaker side, so very thin, long, with, you see, stuff like this growing inside. You see, this is not a reliable branch. What I can do with this one? If it's a part of a structural branch, okay, it will be a part of the pad. But if it comes from the trunk and inside, it's a branch that don't have any structural use. It's only inside, not producing any photosynthesis, not helping the tree to really get stronger, and so I have to remove it, okay? So you see here, in this section, I will show you really quick, is where I have kind of these 2 apexes, okay? So they go up and then they start subdividing in many branches. Here especially this one is splitting in 2, and I have another smaller branch, a little bit compact, so I need to remove one of these 2 ends because otherwise they will keep competing to be the leader. So that's the moment to make those choices according to structure and taper, okay? when I generally style a tree, I always go through a very easy and secure schedule. That is, I did the cleaning. While I clean the tree, I analyze the possibility I have in terms of structure, in terms of branches, trunk line, position of the trunks, and then I make my decision. Okay, I can use this front, I can use these branches as the main branches, I can cut this branch and that one transform in a gin. Then is the part that I'm doing now, that is the selection. So I remove everything is not useful for the future design, okay? And I start removing these branches. In this case, you see, I'm leaving these little stumps, one longer, one shorter, because I will transform them in gin. So that's my next part after I do the selection. Every part I remove, I transform in a gin, so I can also, being a conifer, add some deadwood to the composition. You know, older conifer has gin and shari around. Mugos has shari a little bit more than Scots pine. In this case, I'm not gonna do any shari on this tree. I don't wanna, as a first styling, I don't wanna give extra stress to the trunk. I do the gin, but then the shari work is something that we can do in the next styling, okay?
Let's get down.
You want it?
I was looking at the little ones, I was like, ooh.
Yeah, so you see here, for example, okay, we have two branches, lower branches, bar branches. I like to keep this one, better structure, better taper, inner branches. This one was longer, a little bit more, same thickness all the way out. It could have been a good branch for depth, but I have this guy coming from this section here. So, okay, you know, between these two, I like more this directionality branch, and I get rid of that. So you see already that removing, for example, on this trunk, removing some of the branches, especially the one going against the other tree, create a better taper of the trunk, simplify the structure in some of the key points that are the bifurcation. You see, we have these points, so I remove a branch that was going up, and I kept this guy and this guy, so every internode, basically, I have a first branch, then I have here other two, then I go up, I have this one. I can still remove one of these three. You see, I have three branches here. I've cut two good ones here, in my opinion. Maybe having a little one on top, I can remove this guy here. And then I have the apical part with some nice branches. I start laying them down. So, more or less, I did what I needed in terms of primary selection. I will eventually remove some other part later when I start, you know, wiring and positioning. I need to see the different layers, the different level of the branches. But more or less, we are in the point I need, okay? So now the next part is working on the gin. So using this tool, I remove the bark, always first, from the little stumps that I create. If someone is not familiar with this, so we create some gin. So when we have, you know, some dead branches, we call them gin. And when the deadwood is on the trunk, we call them shari. Okay, so the first thing is removing the bark, basically, and the cambium from the little stump I let, because what I want to do, I want these branches or this stump to dry out. And after that, using a concave cutter or a gin plier, I will basically create the tips to give a natural look of the different parts.
everybody knows the tool he's using is called a refinement, and that's his creation. It's the best. We talked about this today. The steel that the guy uses to make tomorrow those tools is the best. The tool never goes dull, super sharp. It's the only, if you're going to buy, like, you know, if you want to buy a tool for doing knitting, that's the one to buy.
Only for today, $9.99.
Buy two.
Yeah, I remember when I started with the local club doing bonsai and everything, and we did workshop, and every time we have to create a gin or shari, the only tool we had was a little cutter, the one you use to cut the cardboard, for example, and every time was a pain to do gin and shari because you have this blade, and if the blade you elongate too much, it breaks, and then finally one year I was, I started already going a little bit around. I was in a congress in Czech Republic, and this guy got one of these bark striping tool from Japan, and I said, oh wow, that's very handy, and I bought some from him. They were not very sharp because probably the metal they were done was pretty cheap, so they lost, how you call this, filo, edge. They lost the edge pretty soon, but then, one of my students, still my student, Rudy, he was working in a factory that they cut the big trunks with this big saw blade. And he started taking away the teeth of the big saw blade, and he was able to bend them. And because the steel of those is super strong, because they have to cut big trunks, and with the heat, he was able to bend them. He basically made this tool, and we start using it. And every time I was going around, every people was, this tool is good. I saw Rudy every year made more or less 500 for me. And when I travel all over the world, I sell to people and make the work much easier, So now what I want to do is get basically all these parts ready so I can create my gin. And then after doing the Deadwood, I can start the wiring part and a little bit the positioning of the structure. Tom, as I said, I grow a lot of Mugo pines because actually these are the trees that I start collecting originally when I start doing bonsai, because the Dolomites upper to a certain height are full of Mugo pines. Mugo pines is the tree that grows in very harsh condition, is able to grow with lack of water for many months, and under the snow, we have a big snowpack, and Mugo is super strong. The only weakness is what I said before, is not used to the heat, and so in summer you need to find a certain way to protect it. So that's the only weakness of Mugo, especially if it's an old tree. We have, for example, a variety of Mugo that is called Mugo Turra, because it was discovered from Mr. Turra. And we find amazing specimens of this Mugo in our mountain, but again, is so delicate that sometimes from where I collect to the moment I can style it, I have also to wait 7 years. Because when you move, imagine some of these Mugos has 1,000 years. They grow, you see, this is the growth of a Mugo, right? So imagine already this tree from a nursery can be 30 to 50 years old. And when in the mountain you find a Mugo this big, that is this high, so it's basically a natural bonsai, that tree can be 800 years old easy. So to reacclimatize that tree in the lower environment, you need years, because it's a tree that is used, first of all, to a short growing season. That's the first thing. Mugos up in our mountain, they start growing at the end of May. That is when the snow melt and they start pushing out the new candles. And then they grow only to September. They got the first snow in September. So means the temperature go to 0 degrees, and that's the signal to generally all the trees, okay, now the growing season is finished. So imagine May, June, July, August. Out of 12 months, they grow 3 months. So a tree that grow for 600 years with that habit, and then you move in an environment where the amount of oxygen is higher compared to the 9,000 feet, so change the chemical of what the tree do for its photosynthesis, change the temperature, and obviously change the growing pattern. It needs years to reacclimatize to that. So we need to be careful, and you need just to wait until the tree is showing you that is strong again, and you can start working. Because if you force, you're gonna kill it. And I did mistakes. When I was young. You know, I didn't have many trees, but I have access to great material in the mountain. And I remember one time I collected an incredible mugo that was on top of a rock, beautiful tree, basically almost a bonsai. He has such a compact root ball that I was able basically to put it already into a bonsai pot. Fantastic trunk. And after 2 years, I got invited by Bonsai Focus to do a demo. And I thought that that tree was ready. And I styled it, and in a few months the tree died. I haven't done such a strong styling, but still that was too much for that tree. So now I go much slower, especially compared to Scots pine, because I can style a Scots pine after 3-4 years from collection, but not a Mugo pine. This year I was invited in February. We have the trophy back in Europe, that is the biggest show in Belgium. They invite me for a demonstration, and I bring a Mugo, and that Mugo I collect 7 years before. What I did in 7 years, I just remove the original soil with 1 or 2 repots, and then I prepare the tree just using a couple of guy wire to compact the structure, get a little bit the big bending slowly done, also because I don't like to do heavy bending and styling on a Mugo in the same time, because the amount of stress it can get, especially a Yamadori, is not the same of a nursery tree, you know. Working a 800 years old Mugo is not the same that you work a 30 years old Mugo. So we need to be careful, and it's a pity to waste some great material just for rush, you know. So now luckily I have so many trees that I even wait more than necessary before working them. They just stay there, I prepare, I prune, so I have the time to get the back budding, get the structure mass compact. If I have to bend the branch, I can do it with some guy wire in time and get the branches in the position I want. And this is working in safety, you know. I don't need for myself to do a demo with my trees. I can take the time to do it slow, take my time, you know, think very well which branches I need, which branches I can remove. And then at the moment then the tree is ready, I do the styling, it will be less stressful for the tree, and it will be much better for the entire process. And you think that yes, waiting 7 years is a long time. But you know, in general, when we start with the Yamadori tree, we cannot have a bonsai before 10 years. And if I have to wait 7 years to start the tree, and then in the next 3 or 4 years I can just refine it, is much better than push the first years, and then I have to wait longer after because the tree is so weak, then doesn't recover from the first styling. And still I remember when I did that first demo on that Mugo that now Chris have, I left some extra branches, and then with Chris, exactly, now over the year we remove them, but that helped the tree to stay strong. And now you have a Mugo that is reliable and everything is there. So also here, for example, maybe one day one of these 2 branches can be removed. But now is an extra part of green that will help the tree to recover from this stress. Because more or less, when we touch a material like this, we remove some branches, we wire some other branches, we give a stress to the tree. We need to be aware about that because we are touching something that is alive and is relying on the green to perform photosynthesis, and as soon as we touch, the tree energy goes down. Okay? Any question, guy?
Yeah, I have a question.
Bene.
What kind of fertilizing schedule do you do on a Mugo?
So I have basically all my trees in a similar fertilizing schedule. I don't have many differences between species. I have species that we fertilize more, another one that we fertilize less. So Mugo is not one of these heavy pounding in fertilization. We can just be mild. So generally what I do, I use a organic fertilizer for the roots that is a 5-4-5, and basically weekly we apply some chemical fertilizer to the foliage that can help the tree to have some more micronutrient. I use, for example, Super Thrive. So when it's sunny and the pores of the tree are open, I spray the foliage with Super Thrive, and these help the tree to get these micronutrients that the tree need to develop. And basically, since I see cellular activity in spring, when the temperature rise up and I see that the buds start swelling to become a candle, I start fertilizing once a month, organic, and then I only end, if the summer is too hot, I have 1 month of break in summer. I don't feel that for the tree is good when is, in summer there is a little period, probably you have it here too, then the tree get kind of summer dormancy for the heat being too high. And so it's no good to fertilize in that period because you risk that there is an overwhelming of products in the roots that are not used, and they can eventually damage the roots because they can burn the roots. Okay, it's a little bit when you repot a tree and the tree is, just repotted, you avoid fertilizing the first month because you want the roots to start growing before you fertilize. Otherwise, if you fertilize straight away, you can risk to burn the roots. Okay, so that's my strategy. And then I go over until more or less now, when we still have a positive temperature, so higher than 40 Fahrenheit or 5 degrees Celsius. And when they get lower than 5, I know that my trees are dormant, they don't absorb any nutrients anymore, so I clean all the fertilizing from the pots, I clean the surface of the pots from the leftover of the fertilization, so the roots can breathe, and then they go in winter dormancy. Okay?
Use Super Thrive 100% or diluted?
No, always diluted. You can, if you use 100%, you can burn the tree. The risk of using any product when it's sunny is that if the dilution is not good, the product can stay on top of the foliage and then create this effect, lens effect, and burn the cuticle of the foliage.
Right after pruning the tree, is there anything you can do to help
So,
stress?
yeah, in general, after a styling like this one, that we can say more or less we are stressing the tree, a very important thing is spraying the tree with a fungicide, because we did some sharis, some gin, so we open the pores of the tree to eventually get attacked by spora, and now is a period that eventually can become a little bit more humid. So if there are some spora around and you live close to the forest, there are always a fungal issue that can attack your tree, okay? And because the energy go down, you need to clean the tree from the styling, okay? So I always advise to do a little cleaning with a fungicide, mild fungicide, and then, you know, if you don't touch the roots and you do a main styling like this, you don't need to put the tree in shade. The tree needs still sun because it needs to create photosynthesis, but obviously if you're not going to protect the tree in winter, you can have some problems. So if you have a very cold winter, especially protect the tree from cold wind, because it can damage the parts that are a little bit weaker. If you have a cold frame, cold greenhouse, put inside of the greenhouse and protect the tree during winter, so it will be fine, okay? Any other question?
So the Mugo is considered a single brush?
Bravo, I was waiting this question. So pines, we have basically for bonsai interest, we have two big families. One is the single flash families that normally are the higher elevation trees, Mugo, Scots, lodgepole pine, ponderosa pine, and other part of the world. In Japan, they have a Japanese five-needle pine, so trees that grows in a higher elevation, so they have a short growing season, or a shorter growing season compared to other trees. And then we have the double flash pine. What means double flash? It's not a natural thing that happen on the trees, but there are some pines, the typical one is the Japanese black pine, Pinus Stemberger, that because you prune the first flash, inside of the same growing season, the tree is able to flash again. Why this is important for bonsai? It's important because most of these low elevation trees, they have, or they tend to have, big and long needle. So sometimes you see the pine over there, the Japanese black pine on display, sometimes the only way to reduce the length of the needle is by creating these extra pruning during the growing season. And because the tree is able to produce another growth, that growth, because you prune at the start of the summer, that second growth has only time to end of September to develop and keep the needle shorter. More you do it, more you reduce the needle, because you also every time double up the amount of foliage of the tree. So if the tree has 10 branches, obviously it's going to do longer needles because you need more solar panel. More branches you produce, more the needle can shorten because you need the same amount of solar panel, okay? So basically, the schedule of the operation we do on double flash pines, that we can say we have Japanese red pine, Japanese black pine. You have here actually in New York State, you have peach pine, Pinus rigida, that is the typical pine up here in Sandpoint. I don't want to tell you the place where I go collecting them. So that is a double flash pine. So it's a pine from a low elevation. And peach pine is a great tree for bonsai, you know. Actually, I think Chris has one, right? And I see the tree that we prune. When we did that tree that has only 3 branches when we style it, last year in spring?
Which one?
Your peach pine.
Pitch pine 2 years ago.
2 years ago. So in 2 years, the tree produced so much green that is unbelievable.
Because you have a forest fire. They just,
Sorry?
I said there's a huge fire in West Hampton, and all the pitch pines burn.
Yeah, but
And now if you drive by, it's just tons of new foliage.
so the peach pine, the peach pine developed in a way that basically it reproduces only after a fire. Because it was used to grow in that condition for many, many years, now every time there is a fire at some point is the moment they reproduce. Because they regrow from the base, basically they produce the cone and then the population reproduce. That's a very great pine in my opinion for bonsai. It's very, very similar as the look of the Japanese red pine. Is a little bit probably more yellowish, I will say, in general, but if you give a lot of nitrogen, it tends to become a nice green. This is what I see. Normally in the mountain, it's more yellowish because it grows on top of the rock almost in lack of nutriments, apart whatever is able to produce for itself by, you know, felling the old needle. But is a great species. Then in US you have another pine that is called loblolly pine. Is another of those southern species typical of Texas and also Florida. That's actually not only just a double flash pine, but is also a triple flash pine. So it's a pine so strong that in a year you can prune and reflash 3 times. In Europe, we have only one of these double flash pine, and is the Italian stone pine, Pinus strobus, that is, or Picea elafensis, that is a pine that grows in the seaside. And that's why, again, the growing season is pretty short. So we are able to get the tree to flash 2 times in the same year. But again, remember, we call them double flash, but it's only something that is interesting in the bonsai community. When the tree is planted in the ground, it's not going to flash 2 times in the same season. Every pine only does its normal schedule, that is the buds, that is what you see now, in spring start swelling and become candles. The candles develop the new needle, and then when the tree has developed the new needle, so the new flash, everything is done. So you have the spring flash, and then during the year is going only to produce eventually new inner buds or produce wood if he has to strengthen out some branches. But all the rest we only do in terms of bonsai work, that is basically forcing the tree to flash a second time because we want the tree to basically compact the needles, okay?
The candle elongates fully.
So the overall operation you do, that is called tambaho, so the yearly maintenance of the double flash pine is called tambaho if you search online. The tambaho is made into different phases. The first phase is what you mentioned, that is control the strength of the candle. So the candle develop we have a strong candle, we have a middle candle, we have weak candle, and we pinch the candle. We can pinch the candle normally with the hand, performing a rotation, and you break the candle in the position you want, or you can also use a tweezer and basically twist the candle 90 degrees in the position you want to break, or you can also, before they appear the new needle, you can also cut the candle in the position you want with your scissor. Okay? I normally pinch. Okay? So you pinch the candle and basically you keep 1/3 of the strong candle, you keep half of the medium candle, and you keep, you don't touch the weak candles. That's the phase 1. Why we do the phase 1? We do the phase 1 either in single flash and in double flash pines because we want to control the strength of the tree. In a bonsai or in a tree in general, there are always a stronger part of the tree that are normally the dominant part. They are responsible of the tree to grow. There are medium parts that are like safety, and there are weaker parts that are or branches that stays inside and they haven't grown, or there are parts that are there because the tree see the potential of losing some of the strong part and he has some backup. So doing that, we're gonna basically increase the energy of the weaker section of the tree, and we control the strength of the strong section of the tree. Because again, the goal is always in a bonsai to balance the energy, okay? Because otherwise, and it's something we was, considering at the start of this work, if we allowed stronger part to become stronger and weaker part to become weaker, the weaker will die and the stronger will only survive. And it's something that is not reliable for the bonsai work, okay? So after that first phase, we get into generally early summer to the second phase. The second phase is called mekiri. Mekiri in Japanese, I don't speak Japanese, I only know a few little words to not get lost or to get a drink. So mekiri means cut. It's a term that come from the gardeners that perform mekiri in the old topiary art trees in the imperial castle of the Tokyo castle. They have a collection of that. And basically in early summer, they take the ladders, they go up and they prune all the new vegetation. They don't do pinching because they don't care. It's a big tree, so it's always strong. On a bonsai, we do pinching to balance the energy. They don't care about that part, but they do the mekiri. What's happened? Everything that the tree produce in terms of new growth in the season we are performing that operation get pruned away. So they go inside at the base of the new shoot and they cut it off. Okay? What that make? Because those are the dominant parts of the foliage, that means are the parts where the tree is pushing a lot of the growing hormones to grow, you give a stress to the tree, and the tree need to find something to fight back. So being a double flash pine, the tree say, I lost my apical part, but because I still have energy inside, in the position where I lost that branch, okay, I'm pushing out new buds. That is actually the second flash. So in early summer, after performing Mekiri, the tree in the position where we cut develop 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 buds. These are immature buds, are not the same buds that the tree has in spring. Normally, rather than be reddish or white according to the species, are green buds, because are buds that are produced during the growing season. What we have to do, phase 3, is called mekaki. Mekiri, prune, mekaki, selection. Mekaki, you select from the 5, 4 or 3 buds in the position, you select the 2 that are the strongest, because they will create later in the season 2 little branches with shorter needle side by side. So that operation will not only control the strength of the pine, that rather than have a big single flash, will have 2 shorter, but also will help to double up the foliage. That is something we want in bonsai. We want to pass from 1 branch to 2, and then 2, and then 2, because the goal is to ramify. Okay? So we reduce the size of the needle and we ramify. Okay? Now comes the 4th part. At the end of the year, to prepare the tree for the new growing season, we have to prepare the buds, because at the end of the branches we left and they develop, we're gonna have 1, 2, 3, 4 new buds ready for next spring. And again, we go in and we have to remove the dominant bud, because we want to keep the tree control. And we also, according to the strength of every shoot, we remove more or less old needle, because a shoot that have a lot of needle tend to be dominant compared to the shoot that have less needle or is smaller. So the smaller shoot, we keep more needle at the end of the season, and the stronger shoot, we remove more needle. 4th part of control in the pine. That basically the Tambaho, what we call the Tambaho schedule along the year. There are variations of this technique according to the different masters and according to the different environment, because again, normally, longer is the growing season, more later you do the mekiri, closer to summer. Shorter is the growing season, earlier you do the mekiri. I live in the mountain, and on my black pines I have to do the mekiri generally in early to middle May. A person that grows, I make the example in Italy, in Rome, one of my students in Rome, that obviously is lower elevation, more south of Italy, that the growing season is much larger because the trees start growing in February, and in my place they start growing in end of March. They have to do the mekiri later, almost close to summer, because they risk, if they do the mekiri too early, they will still have a lot of growing season and the needle will still grow. Is that correct, Jason?
Yeah.
I don't know how the season is here, because
The season is similar to ours, where you live, yeah, up and down.
normally, in my opinion, here you do what, mekiri when? Middle June?
Well, depending on the size of the tree, you know,
But generally.
yeah, I mean, I would say mid-June.
Mid-June, yes. So, yeah, compared to my place, is a little bit later, because obviously you are on sea level.
Like the show ends, I try to wait till the very end.
See, exactly. Shorter he has the time, shorter you get the needle. Then you don't want to have a tree like that big with this needle, because it's also stressful for the tree. bigger is the tree, you can have needle like that, so you anticipate the mekiri. Okay? Bene. Now it's always interesting, and especially, you know, I tell you my part of the story according to my experience, but it's always better to rely to people around the area that are part of the club and, you know, confront the experience, say, you know what? You know, my pine didn't really reduce the needle this year. Probably it's because you didn't mekiri too early in the season. And that's what normally happens. And so, you know, we set that timeline according to the different region of the world, you know. There are places, and this open another interesting chapter about the double flash pine, because the double flash pine are pines that basically they don't need winter living in a lower elevation. I have a lot of clients in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro, where is my friend here from Rio. So I have a client that has a beautiful black pine in Rio de Janeiro, on top of Copacabana, looking at the lagoon, and that tree never saw winter all his life, that along the same year, he has all the phases by itself. So what that means? You go there in December and the tree has candles that are developing the needle, he has buds, and he has parts that need to be the mekiri. So all the 4 phases of that, they are at the same time on the tree. Because that tree don't know which season is. He don't know.
So does he fertilize it all the time?
Yes, there is no dormancy, nothing. And that tree is constantly, according to the part of the tree, growing. And that's a behaving that for me is amazing, of a species that readapt to a condition that is totally different from the original genetical condition. But because that tree was not imported, but it was grew in Brazil since it was a seed, it really adapted is genetic to the new environment. And it's unbelievable. So every time I go, you know, I restyle a little bit the tree, I clean, and I do the 4 phases according to the different part of the tree in the same day. Yeah. And the tree is strong, is happy, and everything. And this happened to another client in Belo Horizonte, so central of Brazil, that has another type of climate, but still doesn't have the winter, and that those trees grows constantly all the time. Yeah. That's why sometimes, especially when we import a tree and is used to grow in a certain condition, can be tough for the tree to readapt to the new condition, because, you know, change everything. It's like the old Mugo Pine that I have to babysit for years in order to make him understand that we are not in the Dolomites anymore, we are down in the valley and everything is different, you know. So what I'm doing now, you can see already here, I start from this main tree and I start, you know, wiring and opening branches. I basically create a structure, you see. So I created a different part. This is one of my 5 trees. And I lay down the branches, I push them down, I open, I clean the underneath, I wire what is necessary to open the solar panel, start getting light inside, because the problem, as I said originally, growing everything up and the competition, all the branches are naked. When we lay down the branches and now we have only foliage at the outer part, we will start having some light here. So what we'll do, the pinching, is send back a message and the tree will say, finally, some light is coming here. And because this is still a young branch, it can start developing back budding and I start creating my pads. So now is a primary style on the structure, and then on the next styling we can do a little bit more refinement to really position and get some pads done, okay? Conifer always, or let's say not always, most of the time when we style a conifer, the idea is to bring the branches down, okay, from the trunk, because being high elevation trees, the branch is bent under the snow or under the same weight of the foliage growing, and because most of the conifer are flexible, the branches tend to go down differently from the deciduous tree that have a more upward movement. So I always say this, the deciduous hold the weight of the foliage with the shoulders and they bend under the weight, and the conifer hold the weight with the biceps. So the branch go down and hold the weight.
How long will you keep the wire?
So it's always the tree that will tell you when is the time to remove the wire. So imagine on a first styling when we bring branches down from the original position, and so we basically start bending the fiber of the branch. I will expect already in autumn next year there will be a bunch of wire, structural wire that we can remove, and we will have the branches in position. And when we see the wire getting tight to the branch, is the time to remove it. Normally, conifer has a very different growing pattern than deciduous. So when we wire a deciduous tree during winter, normally already in early spring, the tree thicken up the branches, getting ready to shoot, and we have to be careful and observe in order to remove the wire in time. Conifer has a growing pattern, so they generally shoot out in spring, mature the new foliage in summer, and only after summer they have a period that is normally 10 to 15 days in September in our climate that they tend to thick up the branches. So I will say after summer, observe the tree, and when you see some part getting tight, remove only those parts. Don't make the mistake that a lot of people do, and when they see in a tree like this a piece of wire biting in, they go and they remove all the wire. Because there are branches that need more time, because we just move them a little bit. For example, this guy. And maybe a big branch like this that will perform a lot of energy, we bring it down drastically, it will tend to thick up much faster, okay? The idea of wiring and rewiring a tree is a concept that a lot of time is mistaken by the people, because people think they have to wire the tree, then cut all the wire off, then go again and rewire completely the tree, and then cut the wire off again. For me, it's not like that. We wire because we don't want to wire again. What that means, the wire has to stay on the tree until the branch stays in position. The moment the branch is thick and the moment the branch sit in position, I can remove that wire. I have trees with fine wire that the wire is on for 10 years. But because it's finer wire, because I control the strength of the tree, I don't need to rewire them, and I don't need to remove that wire, okay? So probably and generally, when you start a new project like this, you have to unwire parts and then eventually put some guy wire to reset the branches, but don't really go through a main wiring like the one we're doing tonight. This structural wire can stay on the tree as long as possible. When is the time to remove will be also the time that those branches will not need wire anymore. Okay, that's my concept.
Mauro, can you talk about the general rule, one piece of wire, two branches, so they understand not to just...
Okay, so my concept is this one. My concept of wiring is this one. Who saw my demos or work with me knows that I'm very picky on the wiring for two reasons. Wiring a tree is one of the most stressful operations that we can do on the tree. So we need to know how to wire well because we want to give less stress possible to our tree. We don't want to wire a tree and because we wire badly or poorly, at the end of the story, some branches died because we tortured them too much. So we need to know how to apply the wire properly and, we want to keep all the branches alive. So my concept is this one. A tree is a system. Is a system that is built by primary, secondary, tertiary branches. Every branch size need a different gauge of wire. You see, I was wiring from the bottom to the top and keep changing the gauge according to the size of the branches. Primary branches, lower primary branches need a bigger gauge, and while you go up, you downsize more and more and more according to the size of the branch. And when you go down out to secondary and tertiary branch, you use a smaller gauge, okay? My concept is subdivide my system tree 2 by 2, 2 primary, then 2 secondary, then 2 tertiary, from the bottom to the top and from inside outside. Doing that, I use the less amount of wiring possible, that means I apply the less amount of stress, and I connect branches in the way I can move them in position and the tension is held back in the point of connection between the two branches that I'm wiring. So using the idea that Chris just said, one piece of wire, 2 branches, 2 direction, 2 by 2, I wire all the branches on the tree and I get them into the position. Okay? That's basically the idea. Then we have also, knowing the wiring, we have also to know which type of wiring are we doing. Are we doing a structural wiring like tonight, so applying thicker wire mainly because we want to set the structure in position, or we are doing a refinement? That means I have a tree that already has a nice structure and I wire fine branches to really refine the lines. So according to the type of work, I can also set my strategy for wiring. In this case, you see, I'm not getting crazy trying to wire all the little branches because that will be unnecessary stress for the tree. Because as I said, most of these outer fine branches, maybe one day I will have to remove because I need to push the tree inside. So I will prune them back and develop more inner foliage. So now, mainly, I'm interested on wiring the structure, primary and secondary, and get the branches in position, creating the shape of the future tree. Any extra question about that? Lot of people, from my personal experience, are a little bit intimidating by wiring. And this happened because no, come on. That was the old bad Mauro. Now the new good Mauro is married, is mature, don't say shit anymore. don't make people crying at the workshop, you know. So
It's soft, is what you're saying.
no. So, you know, when you teach bonsai, you know, you want people to be good, to learn, and especially my goal is to make people understand that we need to respect the trees. That's the main thing, because it's not like 15, 20 years ago where people go on a workshop, the day before they buy the material from Home Depot, you know, the 2-gallon pot or 1-gallon pot juniper. You go at the workshop with whatever bonsai master, you cut 90% of the foliage, or you wire the rest, you repot the tree, and then after a month the tree die. You know, we have to understand that we need to have a certain amount of respect for the tree, and we need also, as bonsai master, I need to teach people that bonsai is not today for today, but is today for tomorrow. So I sincerely don't care if this tree look a little bit free tonight, but I want to be able to rework this tree in 1 year or 2 years with the person that is gonna win this tree, and help that person to get this tree to become a bonsai. And this is something that, you know, as a professional, I feel I need to teach my student. And I do it because I made this mistake. You know, I told you, for Russia, I killed that beautiful Mugo, and maybe today it could be part of my collection. And I regret that, but I have to learn from my mistakes. And when I go around, I need to teach people about that, because it's part of my job, you know. Bonsai is not a quick hobby. If you want a quick hobby, collect fossil, right? You go, you buy them, they are beautiful, you put in the cabinet, you don't have to water, you know. Rocks, go out, collect rocks. But bonsai is a little bit more complex hobby. Because the material is alive, we need a lot of respect, we need a lot of agricultural knowledge, and I understand a lot of time is a hobby for the people. And you know, when you have a hobby, some people don't want to put, you know, too much effort in the hobby. They want to be, you know, free and easy and everything. But on bonsai, in bonsai, you need to acquire a lot of knowledge. That's very, very important, because if you want to keep these poor trees alive, that's the only way. Because otherwise, if you don't understand the agricultural part well, you're going to keep making mistakes, you're going to keep killing the trees, and you will never understand why. That's the problem. And this happens a lot all over the world. People that lives in a more tropical environment, I would say, they are a little bit luckier than us, because the environment helps a lot. For us, that we live in a colder environment, already the environment is tough. Winter is very cold, we need to protect the trees because otherwise the roots frost to death. Summer is very hot, we need to protect the tree, otherwise they burn. It's tough, it's not easy, it's not an easy hobby. It's totally not an easy hobby. And you know, a lot of you, my friend here does bonsai for so many years. I do bonsai for 30 years. And when I got my agricultural part set, was when I start also having better results in terms of styling, because you have trees that are in better condition, because the tree reply better to the operation you do, and all certain things. If the tree is not strong, all the operation get more complicated, okay? Going back to Cugnada, what's the first question as a new...
When the tree cover complete the wire.
So you don't want to reach that point. That's why I said it's important daily to observe the tree and see, especially the part you know that were bent more, you have to remove the wire. So generally, we wire with two types of wire. One is copper and one is aluminum. What's the difference? Copper is better for conifer because we need strength, so it's stronger, and a smaller gauge of copper can make more work than aluminum. But you cannot unwire copper. When you want to remove the wire, you have to use the wire cutter and cut it off. All the part that you see start getting tighter, you go in spiral by spiral and you cut it off and remove the wire in that section, okay? That's very important. If you use aluminum wire, that, if you are a newbie in the art of bonsai, is what I advise you to use because it's also much simple to apply. Then, especially for the medium or smaller gauges, you can unwire. Why? Because it doesn't get stiff in the position. Copper, the unhealed copper, the moment you bend, so is flexible, but the moment you create the bend, then it becomes stiff. And along the time, in a year, it will be much stiffer. That is good because we have the problem of conifer. Sometimes spruce, for example, they want to lift the branches because they grow and they do this. So if you wire a spruce with aluminum, in a year you risk that aluminum will go with the branch because it doesn't have that strength, doesn't build up strength, okay? But again, you don't want to reach the point when the wire is basically biting, we say biting into the branch, okay? You have it to remove it earlier. It's not a big deal if on a conifer you're gonna have a little bit of wire marks because then the tree is able to basically reheal and they disappear. But you don't want to have wiring marks on a deciduous tree because deciduous have a much thinner bark, and a lot of time we show deciduous during winter, so we show deciduous basically naked, and if there are branches with wire marks, is a big no-no in terms of overall aesthetic of the tree. Thank you for the question. Any more question, guys?
Yeah, is there any kind of trick to speed up the wound healing process when you cut? Like,
so, you know, I have more or less 200 finished trees in my collection, okay? And so, even if I have a guy who helped me back home for maintenance and everything, it's almost impossible to get through all the trees along the year, right? So it happened that sometimes the wire bites in a little bit more than what you want on the tree. So what we do when we unwire the tree, we have one of those bottles of liquid cut paste. The one I prefer is not the tube, but is a little bottle with a small, I think, I saw one, I don't know if you are, it's not here. You have one that is exactly the one I buy. And so I have my bottle there, we remove the wire, and when we have that kind of, let's say, highway that he left, I fill the highway when it's deep with the cut paste, and the cut paste has a lot of growing hormones inside, so the tree bark fill it, and really quick it closes. Sometime, going back, if the wire bites in so much and we remove the wire, basically we don't have a bark in that section because the tree was pushing against the wire, And then we have to put the cut paste so we cover and we don't risk that the branch is going to eventually dry out if it gets exposed to sun, for example, or wind or cold. So I turn the tree really quick. You see I did already all this part. Now you see I lay down the branches, creating the different levels. I have already my 3 apexes, the leader here, secondary and third one here. So I haven't been crazy. You see, wiring all this little stuff is unnecessary stress for the tree. Now I want to set the position of the structure. You see, get all the branches in a nice position where they can develop and become reliable pads for the future of the tree. Remove a little bit of whatever is hanging down that is not necessary. And now I'm moving to this tree, and then I will do the last one, okay? Bene. Yeah, you know, what?
I said even when you cut it, it was like,
You don't like it?
no, I just, I wish I could be that crazy.
So, you know, in general, I never prune branches if I don't have a clear idea of the future styling of the tree. Until I don't get that idea, I hold on and wait. Doesn't matter, again, if you have the tree at home, you don't have to style it all in once. You can just grow the tree, clarify your ideas, and think about the future of the tree. Because again, when you cut a branch, it's gone. You know, on a deciduous tree, it's a little bit more simple because deciduous grow from the trunk. And so even if you cut a lot of branches, then eventually you are lucky enough that they grow back. But the conifer, most of the time, when a branch is gone, is over, you know. And especially, you know, if you have a finished tree and you lose an important branch for a reason or another, then is a big problem, because how you rebuild or you reshape the tree and you lost one of the primary lines. Because again, when we style trees or when we have a finished tree and you focus in the structure, you always have first branch, second branch, depth, and then apex. So if you lose one of these primary line, it can become a problem for the tree, either in terms of growing the tree because you lose a big mass of green that help the tree surviving, but aesthetically for bonsai is also a problem. So I never cut a branch before I'm really sure I don't need it, okay? And you see, even if I remove some lines, now that I push down the branches, I was able to fill all the spaces because it's something important for the future of the development of the tree.
Can you tell us what size wires you're working through today?
So I start, I think it's a 6. Let me check. Okay, because it says 12, but this is not a 12. So I think this is a 6. So you see, I start from the lower branches with a 6, so I can give a good movement down and eventually also a side movement. We don't want to just bend the branches down, but we want also to give a little bit of an S shape to the branches, to not have them so rigid. I want to give a little bit of a gentle movement side by side. And then, you know, I downsize with smaller gauges. I go through 10 in some other branches. And then here I'm finishing up with some 18 in order to get, for example, here I pushed down a branch and everything was going in the wrong direction. So I have to wire these little guys in order to open them in position and get them in the good position to receive the sunlight. Normally when we do refinement of the tree, these are small lines we wire with the fine wire, and then we tilt all the end up to already position to receive sunlight. Now that I'm not doing fine wire a lot, I just open flat the branch, and I know that these buds, for example, that now are pointing out, as soon as become spring and they start developing, they will already go up, and then they will start creating the shape of the pad, okay? Yeah, I really enjoy, one of the parts of bonsai that I enjoy the most is giving the first styling to a tree, because I always feel you give this kind of a imprinting and you give your shape. It's something that I was talking to Chris today, that, we went through quickly some of the trees in his collection, and some of them I styled myself along the years. And I can, even if, I don't really remember every tree that I style, because, I go through probably 300 trees at least every year. But when I style a tree and I see how the branches are set, or sometimes there is wire on and I see how the wire was positioned, I can recognize my work, because it gets very, very easy to me to rework on those trees, because I prepare the structure in a certain way that then everything is more reliable step by step while the tree is developing. Today it took a juniper, and we look at the juniper, and the tree grew very well. I have to rewire some of the thinner branches, but most of the main branches were very good in position. And I said, did I style this tree? And he said, yeah. Now I understand why he's doing this and that. Yeah. Now, sometimes for me, for example, it's very difficult to restyle a tree that is done by another professional. Not because we have so many different ways to style it, but when you position the branches in a certain way, and one of the part of the positioning is also very personal. I like to have the two lower branches coming towards the observer, creating kind of the welcome to the composition. Like here you can see from the front you have the two lower branches that create this angle, and they basically drive the eyes of the observer inside of the trunk, showing the different movement of the secondary trunks. So some other professionals, they tend to be a little bit more static, or some other, they put one in the front and one sideways. Doesn't mean that is wrong, but it's some little points I can recognize a tree that I styled compared to a tree that was styled by another professional. Yeah. Any other question, guys? No question.
Any insect problems?
Insect. Mugo is a pretty strong tree when it's stable, doesn't get many disease. So in Italy, the biggest problem we have with Mugo is not an insect, but is a fungal issue. All the Mugos in the mountain, they have fungal issues inside that is called, wait, it's coming. It's called tracheomycosis. So basically, because Mugo grows in such harsh environment, they have to produce their own soil. So they grow on top of the rock. So Mugo is not a tree that grows alone. Mugo grows inside of the Mugeta, we call, that is the Mugo propagation. And they basically cover part of the rock between 10, 15 Mugos, different Mugos, and they cover everything. So they cover the soil because they want to hold the moisture to the roots, because they are on top of rocks that otherwise they will dry out very fast. And the other thing, growing so compact, they also lose every year the old needle, and the old needle rot and create soil for the tree to grow. So there is this fungal issue that develop in the Mugo population, and it's called tracheomycosis, that in the mountain is responsible of cleaning the Mugo place. There is an avalanche that breaks some branches. The branch get weaker, the Mugo that is inside of the lifeline of the tree react and kill that branch, transforming very quick that wood into new soil. Unfortunately, when you move the tree in a lower elevation, you risk that only the change of environment make that fungal issue to activate and kill the tree. So if you stress the Mugo too much by removing, for example, too many roots when you collect the tree, that fungal issue activate, and all of a sudden the Mugo become brown and die. Yeah, you have to be very, very careful. It's not a problem that you have here because you don't have native trees, but you have tracheomycosis. And sometimes you see on styled trees that the branch all of a sudden become a strange color, very pale, you know, and the tree lose that branch. That is tracheomycosis. So it means that the tracheomycosis is on the tree get weak for a certain reason. It can be, you know, environment, and then the weaker branch get eaten by the fungal issue. Yeah, this tracheomycosis is a fungal issue that grows inside of the lifeline of the tree, and basically is like a blood clot. If the fungi develop, and because also some trees have very slow sap, the sap is not able to reach the branch anymore, and the branch basically fail. Yeah, so it's a big problem we have because, you know, basically we collecting the Mugos, we bring that fungal issue down, and now we have the variation of that fungal issue in junipers, in Scots pine, and we need to be very careful. That's why it's always, you know, good to work on the trees only when they are strong, after working fungicide. There are a lot of ways. Avoid, for example, this is something, you know, this is also why I avoid going around with my tools nowadays, because also in my workshop, I work on this tree and then I move to another one, I clean the tools. This is something a lot of people don't do, and I'm getting more and more conscious about this along the years, because you risk, and especially a professional like me who does workshop in my place, you get everyday trees from different people, and these trees, you don't know if this tree has a fungal issue. Sometimes you don't see it, and then, you know, you use a Rudiban. Typical. We do a gene and, take my Rudiban. You do the Rudiban, then you do the same on your tree. It's like HIV. Goes from a tree to another. And then you inoculate the fungal issue in your tree, and maybe your tree was clean. So in the workshop, thanks to my beautiful wife, we have a spray bottle of alcohol, and when we finish the day or when we move to a tree to another, we always clean the tools. This is something, guys, I really recommend to do it, because again, I paid that on my skin.
Do you let it dry, or do you wipe the tool?
What do you mean?
Do you spray it and then let it...
No, I clean with a piece of paper, yeah. Okay. You know, sometime, for example, to get rid of the extra what's the name? I'm getting short in words tonight. Sap. On the tools you can use a little bit of olive oil. Olive oil, get rid of that. Or one of my students got in the workshop some little towels. They have a special ingredient that clean very fast the sap, also from the hands. But for the tools, we have this little sprayer. So you take the scissor, spray, clean, and then it's done, okay? Yeah, it's super important, you know. It's like if you go to the emergency room and they, you know, they take care of you after another person and they use the same tools. I don't think you will be happy about that. And the same story is about the trees, you know. So you see, slowly we getting now to the last tree, and again, another time from the lower part up, I apply the wire, I lay down the branch, and then at the end, I will see if I eventually want to move this trunk a little bit. I will see the interaction between the different trunk. So because this is basically a multi-trunk, I don't do like I would have done for a normal tree, like do all the lower part, then all the medium part, and then the apex. I do every tree singularly, position, and then at the end I will look and I will reset eventually the position of the branches according to the overall composition, not only for the tree itself.
Would you put cut paste on everything you cut? Or
So on conifer, you don't really need the cut paste because here you don't want the tree to reheal. Apical is very strong. These branches are medium, and I have a lot of weak branches inside, right? What's happened?
No, you're good. I'm just going to make an announcement.
Okay, so now that I lay down the branch, obviously if I don't do anything, this will be the stronger, this will be the medium, and still this will grow a little bit. But if in spring I pinch the two external part, then now I send a message inside, and these guys will start getting stronger. That is what we want, because we want to create volume inside of the pad. And so we remove energy from here and we allow the energy to grow there. That's why, you know, we push down to give this conifer look, but also in the meantime it's something good, you know, agriculturally, because I need to build 70, okay? And one day is 20. And these obviously give a lot of problems to the trees. So they need an environment where the temperature is along the winter consistent, okay? The other problem, being in a lower elevation close to the sea, is that you can eventually don't have natural barriers, mountain like we have, is that during winter you can have a lot of cold wind. Cold wind is very bad for the ramification of the tree, because as for hot wind can dry out the branches, even if it's winter. Because yes, we say that the trees are dormant, but they are not dormant 100%. That is always a percent, especially on an evergreen that has to hold the moisture in the foliage. There is always a percent of the tree that is kind of active. And if the winter we expose, especially a newly styled tree like this one, on cold wind, we risk to really damage a lot of the branches. So, you know, I also advise be in a club and have the luck of having people like Chris around. If you're gonna win this tree, you don't have the facility to, you know, welcome the tree during winter, talk with Chris, maybe you can have the tree.
For you, we'll work something out.
Yeah, I mean, for me, you know, exactly. I mean, for me it's a pity when I see a good tree with a good potential like this one, that for lack of infrastructure or knowledge from the person who's winning the tree is gonna die. Because again, good material is difficult to find, And, we put effort on a tree and, style it and dream that one day become a good bonsai. And so if we have the possibility of helping the tree, going through, a stressful time is much better, okay? So that's my advice. So we're getting almost to the end of this last tree. Sometimes when I look at this tree and I see the amount of work, I said, "Ooh, there is a pretty good amount of branches that I have to wire." But then, I start the demo, I go through my schedule that is pretty nice and easy, and all of a sudden, talking and explaining, I get to the end of the work and I say, "Oh wow, it's almost done." And we actually made it in a good time, I think. What's the time? Is what? Perfetto. Yeah, we're almost there.
For the temperature on the cold frame, do you not want it to drop below 32 or 30?
So my cold frame never go lower than 30. In the colder day outside, and we get to the 14 Fahrenheit in my place, my cold frame don't go lower than 30. My other trick is I have my cold frame in shade, so that's actually helped me a lot, especially because in those winter sunny days, the temperature in the cold frame don't rise drastically, creating stress for the trees.
Do you have a heater when it gets to 50?
No, I don't need it. But, for example, here in US, where in some places you have a pretty harsh winter, I have clients that have a heater and a fan inside of the greenhouse. And actually, some people think it's such a very incredible and expensive thing, but it's not. So I have a client who have a cold frame probably 30 feet, and you have a fan on the upper part. Then when the temperature goes higher than 45, open the fan and basically move out all the hot air. And then in a lower corner as a heater, then when the temperature drop lower than 32, the heater go a little bit and rise up the temperature and keep the temperature constant. So if you have a little thermostator that you can buy easily nowadays almost everywhere, and connect these 3 points properly, you can really make your cold frame functional for your trees.
That's it.
So almost there. A few little pieces of wire here in the top. If you have more questions for this last part of the job.
I have a question about fungicide.
Sì.
Is there any natural products that you can use?
So yes, there are people, they don't want to use a chemical and basically venoms against fungi or against pest. And years ago, I had a student who worked into the industry of wine, and in the place where he was working, they didn't want to use any, chemical, and so they created their own protection, and they were making garlic and poison ivy.
Poison ivy.
Poison ivy.
We have plenty of that.
Yes. How you say? Rotting basically in water for a week.
Okay.
Fermentation, bravo. Fermentation is the word. So they make ferment garlic and poison ivy, and these are natural fungicide and pesticide for the trees. So you can create that mix.
You'll get poison ivy.
Sorry?
Never touch your tree again after.
No, but
Getting that poison ivy.
Yeah, I can't be anywhere near.
I had to get shots to get rid of it.
oh really?
Yeah.
So yeah, basically in that company they were using these products and they are very, very good. For example, in bonsai we have sometimes problem with the red spider mite, right? So there is a type of plant that is in Italian is called erba cipollina, that the translation is onion herb. I don't know how is the name here for you, but it basically have a smell.
Does it have the white flowers?
See,
Like the cluster, but it's called garlic mustard.
garlic,
Garlic mustard.
okay, that you use on cooking too.
Wild here, yeah.
Very good.
Almost like spinach.
Bravo, esatto. So I had pots of that grass close to the trees that I want to protect. That generally red spider is very sensible on junipers. Never had red spider again.
It grows wild here, everywhere.
Yeah, you put in a pot, you sit close to the trees that eventually in your collection can be, affected by spider mite, and it helps. So, the work is done. You see, I was able to create the basic structure of the multi-trunk. We have the 5 apexes, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Good interaction between the branches, good interaction between the trunks. What I tried is, what we want is in the external part of every curve of the trunk, we want to have a branch. So I was selecting also branches, thinking about that. I open everything. It's not a refined work, as I said, because it's not, I don't need now to have all the nice pads ready for a show, but I want the structure ready to grow and then create a good foliage for the future. I think that the tree has a good future because it's not easy to find, especially here, nice Mugo pines like this one. And again, thank you so much for having me tonight. Thank you, guys. Any question or? Sell tickets, sell, because it's a good tree.
Is that like 30 pounds to lift?
No, it's not so heavy. Let me see. No.